And I don't mean to say it has to work like a company, but it can do social spending, which is also necessary, only if it actually raises the revenues which are currently available.
But let me take that point forward. And Rajiv Chandrasekhar, I want you to comment on this. The conversation that I was having with Siddharth Birla just a while ago, that a lot of the problems or a lot of the paralysis of decision making is on account of decisions that are pending at the level of the state government. A lot of the clearances, especially on matters like land, are decisions that a state government has to take. Mr. Modi has talked about creating these regional councils where chief ministers and the central government will sort of work together, will act as one team. Do you believe that perhaps if we get this mechanism going, we could see faster clearances, we could see speedier decision making?
Shireen, I want to try and attempt to answer the question that you posed to the earlier panelist before I answer this. I don't think this is going to be this easy. We are in a situation where the new government is inheriting an economy which is a scorched economy kind of a situation. This low growth, high inflation model that we are stuck in is going to take a few years to get out of. It is not going to be trivial. This is not about making a few announcements on day one and on the 30th day finding that we've suddenly found a miracle cure for what we haven't been able to solve for years. So there are some structural issues in the economy that will take pretty steady hand on the steering wheel to navigate through this real mess that has been left for the new government. That's point number one. Point number two, on the question that you raised, I think it is a no-brainer for anybody to understand that the economy is a sum of parts. It is a question of policy making in Delhi and working in cooperation and partnership with the states. So this is a no-brainer. Unfortunately, in the UPA for the last many years, there has been absolutely zero attempt to create a consensus on any issue. And I've sat in Parliament as NK has, and I know the number of suggestions that we have made completely on a bipartisan basis that have been completely ignored. So there is clearly two things that are being signaled today by Modi, which is one is that he will work in partnership. He will reach out to the state government, even if these state governments happen to be Congress, to try and create a workable economic architecture and model. And that is what is necessary. And the second is, like I said, there is no magic wand and there is no shortcut to basically slowly walking our way and navigating our way from the mess that we find ourselves in today.
NK Singh, let me come back to you because, you know, in terms of change and continuity, while you would like the next government to change the approach as far as entitlement-based schemes are concerned, what about continuity on key reforms? For instance, this government, some would say late in the day, but did take the bold decision to try and link energy prices, or at least fuel prices, to the market, be it petrol or diesel. Do you believe that we are likely to see that continue? You know, as far as the rupee, for instance, is concerned, while the Reserve Bank, you know, does not defend a particular level, what is your own assessment as far as where the rupee could possibly be headed, given the fact that we now see inflows coming in, and what do you believe should the government's position or the Reserve Bank's position be as far as the rupee is concerned?
Well, I think that the governor of the Reserve Bank has articulated exceedingly well that he sees the rupee float between a range of 58 to 62, which I think balances out excessive volatility, which gives enough incentive to exporters and which doesn't make the import too expensive. So I think that managing the rupee in the context of large inward capital flows will be the new and a different kind of a challenge which the Reserve Bank will have to face, but a challenge which should ensure that the competitiveness of our export doesn't get unduly eroded and the imports also become reasonably priced. On the issue which you mentioned of continuity, one of the things which I think took everybody by surprise is that in the Vajpayee regime, when he came as Prime Minister, people expected that the policies of the Manmohan era and the Manmohan Narasimha Rao era would be substantially reversed. But it didn't. I think he added new impetus to that. And one of the factors driving India's economic reforms has been the need to improve the quality of the reforms, but certainly to ensure that there is a reasonable amount of continuity. I expect a new burst of change to take place. Mr. Modi, in his interview, which I thought was seen by a lot of people, mentioned that in dealing with the issue of petroleum and oil prices, the poor have to be certainly protected. At the same time, expenditure outlays have to be related to expenditure outcomes. We need a much better expenditure management system than has been possible so far.
Meera Sanyal, you know, whether the Aam Aadmi Party captures 3 seats or 7 seats nationally is a matter that will be, decided on as far as the 16th of May is concerned. We do know what the poll is suggesting at this point in time. But to your mind, what is the big takeaway from this entire election process? You spoke about how the Aam Aadmi has positioned itself as almost the leading opposition party, so to speak. But what, to your mind, has been the big takeaway as far as this election process is concerned?
I'd say, Shireen, there are 3 things. I think the first one speaks of leadership, and in that context also succession. So if the polls are to be believed, this result which we are seeing is the consequence of a Modi wave, the dependence on one man. So what I'd like to see in the coming days, in fact, if this is true, I'd like to see what is going to be the cabinet of Mr. Modi and what are his succession plans for Gujarat. Because we have heard of no one else except of one man. And this I can tell you, one man cannot claim to lead 1.2 billion people or even represent them. And certainly not someone with such a unilateral focus. That's the first thing. I think the second thing is the need for transparency. Irrespective of the outcome of this election, people are really looking for transparency and accountability. And one of the things that has certainly puzzled me is this massive amount of money which has been spent. Some would call it propaganda, some would call it PR, which, you know, your own channels are talking about ranging between 5,000 and 10,000 crores. I'd like to know where this money came from. And if it is true that it has come from industry, well, we all know that there is always a quid pro quo. Who is going to benefit as a result of these massive handouts? I think the country needs to know that, and I certainly hope that the BJP will be transparent about the sources of its funding before it starts doing other things. And related to that, you know, things, no, let me just finish it. No, just a second.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
So connected with that, so for example, we've just read that the Reliance Group is now asking for the increase in gas prices. I'd like to know how this is all going to, you know, to shape out. And the third thing I'd like to know is how will this government, and in particular Mr. Modi, who's been quite confrontational with many chief ministers, take those necessary steps to build that federational kind of collective behavior, for example, to pass GST. If the TMC is going to be the largest opposition, well, we've all heard the exchanges between, you know, Mamta Didi and Mr. Modi. How is this all going to play out?